I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It is Tuesday and we are looking back on another wild week in the NFL, Week 4. It is also the first day of October. We are looking forward to a week where we will start bye weeks and the London games. Feels like a lot is going on as we get to the heart of the NFL season. Dennis, how did you like Week 4?
One pride, baby, one pride.
It was a good way to end.
It was a great close to the week. Actually, I did pretty good on my picks. I was looking back, some of these picks I made. I feel like you kind of, when I picked the Titans, I thought you looked at me like I was kind of bonkers.
I had more hopes apparently for the Dolphins than I should have, but we will. It's just one of the sad games that we will get to. I didn't do too bad either. I went 10-6, so I'm guessing we both did okay. I'm not doing too bad this season. Picks against the spread, I need to get better. It's guessing how much of a point spread in these games I got to improve on. And one of those was the Atlanta Falcons hosting the New Orleans Saints. I thought the Falcons would get a win, but they just barely squeaked it out, 26-24. Dennis, you had some high hopes that we'd get some playable weeks from Juwan Johnson. He's in the mix, but not seeming to get a lot of targets. Only 2 receptions for 13 yards on Sunday. Is he kind of droppable for you?
Yeah, I mean, he was tight end 5 in week 1. Week 2 and 3, he played 41 and 50% of the snaps and put up 0 points. And then this week he had 3.3 points. I know he played a season high 69% of the snaps, but it just feels like between Taysom Hill and Foster Moreau, there's just too much noise at the tight end position, and none of them, other than Hill, when he's doing not tight end stuff like running the ball and playing wide receiver or throwing the ball, he's the only one putting up anything relevant at the tight end position. Well, that's not to say that Johnson won't have a game here or there, but good luck picking the right week to put him in your lineup.
Meanwhile, for the Falcons, they get the win. They had a couple of touchdowns, but not really offensive touchdowns. Daryl Hodge getting a fumble recovery for a touchdown. They also had a defensive score. What do you make of this offense? It probably doesn't help you that Raheem Morris went ahead and said stats are for losers in his post-game press conference, indicating he didn't want to take any fantasy questions.
I mean, on one hand, I don't blame him. And it isn't like we're going to stop playing fantasy because he's an asshole about it. So, I mean, but to be fair, yeah, you can avoid looking at stats, but the better stats your players have usually makes it easier to win games. So, I mean, don't get me wrong here. I love Tyler Algier as much as the next guy, but I'm thinking Bijan Robinson must have got lippy. Maybe Robinson was talking stats with Morris too, and that's why he
got hurt, like a hamstring issue, something I ended up seeing.
Yeah, it was. I mean, Cousins had a decent game. London, love seeing
Bijan tweaked his hamstring, which I think that's why he didn't get a full complement of carries.
You love seeing Drake London with 12 targets. It was tough with the goose egg for Kyle Pitts, but Darnell Mooney, I think, is trying to push his way into weekly flex consideration.
So is Ray McLeod.
Ray freaking McLeod.
It was specifically in reference to Kyle Pitts that he said stats are for losers. So he's picking up the mantle that Arthur Smith left behind, but at least they're winning games. Next up, Chicago Bears get a 24-18 win at home over the Rams. Dennis, on Friday, I mentioned I was kind of interested in Tutu Atwell, who has had a couple of quietly good games. Another 4 catches and 82 yards. He's had some time in this system. It seems like Stafford trusts him, and maybe even McVay trusts him since all of his better options are now on IR. How are you feeling about Atwell?
He's earning targets with Kupp and Nacua out of the lineup. Kupp's not on IR. But he was still.
He might as well be because they said he's going to be out for a couple more weeks.
Well, and the thing is, like, he is on IR. They're just not executing the transaction because they only get a limited number of them, so they're playing that game. I get it. You got to do what's right for your team. But he was still third on the team in targets behind Jordan Whittington, who, and Colby Parkinson, who. So, I get it. There's a lot of no names when you got 2 big stars out, but Tutu's getting the ball down the field. He only caught 4 passes, which was tied for second on the team.
But he's been steadily. He had 4 for 93 the week before, 3 for 48 against Arizona. I'm considering the landscape and the fact that we are about to see the Titans, the Eagles, Lions, and the Chargers on a bye, in addition to the battery of injuries out there. You might have some grim choices to make. You could do worse than getting 12 points.
Yeah, and if Atwell's out there on your waiver wire, for the next few weeks while they're recovering, he's definitely worth a priority ad. Spend a little fab on him. And
Dennis, I tried to write the obituary for DeAndre Swift on Friday, and I think he heard me. Did manage to take advantage of the second soft defense in a row. They did get Roschon Johnson involved early. He actually scored a rushing touchdown early. But in the passing game, for reasons surpassing human understanding, Swift seemed to be the only one Caleb Williams wanted to look for, catching 7 for 72. And then he had 93 yards on the ground, including a 36-yard scamper for a touchdown there. Was this the game you wanted to see from DeAndre Swift?
Yes, it is. But before we get too excited, the Rams give up the 5th most fantasy points to running backs coming into the game and the 3rd most rushing yards. So it isn't like the Rams are, the fearsome foursome. It was set up for him to do well. And he still lost goal line touches to Roschon Johnson. It seems like he's looking good in the passing game, and he's going to continue to get that work even if Roschon starts to take a little bit more of the run game. But I think what happened was Swift was able to make enough plays early that they didn't commit to Roschon. I think we're going to see games coming up in the next couple of weeks that Swift should be able to keep hold of that. They have the Carolina and Jacksonville in the next 2 weeks, and Carolina is awful against the run, and Jacksonville gives up a ton of receptions to running backs. So
the way I look at it, I think we're actually kind of now seeing the Bears backfield we thought we might see going into the season, where it's Swift and Roschon Johnson. The one that seems to be getting phased out is Khalil Herbert, which, at the beginning, it seemed like Johnson was on the outside, but I'm kind of back to thinking that. Minnesota Vikings improved to 4-0, getting a 31-29 victory in Green Bay. Dennis, a couple weeks gone on the out of the lineup with an ankle injury, but Jordan Addison comes back, catches 3 for 72 and a touchdown. They give him a carry in the red zone, which he turns into a 7-yard touchdown. How are you feeling about him going into year 2?
He is who we thought he was. He's across the field from Justin Jefferson, so he's going to continue to get favorable matchups. And then when Hawkinson comes back, that'll ease up even more. And then Aaron Jones is being super productive as well. So it all lines up perfectly for Sam Darnold. He's got arguably the best wide receiver in the game, an ageless wonder at running back. And then Addison, who's he can vary between short area and deep threat. And so I like Addison as a wide receiver 3-4 on a consistent basis, and he's going to have some games where he makes a big play or two and puts up high end wide receiver 2, maybe even low end wide receiver 1 numbers here and there.
Tucker Kraft, I mentioned a couple weeks ago, I thought he was kind of separating himself as the better pass catching option. Well, on Sunday, 9 targets, caught 6 of them for 53 yards and a touchdown. He now has 12 receptions in 4 games versus only 5 for Luke Musgrave. Are you starting to lean toward Kraft being the guy you want there?
Well, if you remember, our good friend Matt Bruning said when they were both drafted that Tucker Kraft was the guy you wanted to roster. And I know Musgrave took over, and I really liked what he was doing, but Musgrave couldn't stay healthy, and Kraft got healthy. And it looks like he's the tight end to roster in Green Bay, at least as long as Jordan Love is healthy.
Next up, Indianapolis Colts held strong at home 27-24 over the Pittsburgh Steelers. Despite the loss, I was pretty impressed with Justin Fields. 22-34, 312 yards and a touchdown. Also ran the ball 10 times, 55 yards and 2 touchdowns. Was this kind of the breakout we needed to maybe push Mike Tomlin to say officially that Justin Fields is his man?
I don't think Tomlin is going to say that. And since they lost that game, it's easy for Tomlin to be wishy-washy. Fields had a good statistical game with over 300 yards passing. He didn't throw any interceptions. Pickens, 7 for 113. That's fantastic. Freiermuth, 5 for 57 and a touchdown. The only thing missing was Najee Harris being able to effectively run the ball. I like Justin Fields. I think he's great for fantasy. He's going to have to continue to play smart, not turn the ball over if he wants to hold on to the job. But I do think he's probably better than Russ right now.
Meanwhile, Anthony Richardson left early on with a hip injury, and Joe Flacco comes off the bench, 16-26, 168 yards, 2 touchdowns, got Michael Pittman going, got Josh Downs going, made the most out of the running game. Do you like this offense with Flacco back there?
It's almost like we like every offense when Flacco comes in and takes over. He's not going to run the ball. He reads the defense well, and he knows how to get the ball to the 6'5" wide receiver with good speed. So it seems like, and also to the 5'10" wide receiver with really good speed too, if I'm being honest. It was surprising he didn't really connect with Pierce or Mitchell downfield, but we saw last year when Flacco came in Green Bay, Cleveland. He settles things down. He makes good decisions. He's not mobile. He's not going to run. You got to protect him. If the offensive line can't protect him, then he's not going to perform well. But if he's got protection, he's going to have good games.
Next up, we head to the Meadowlands where the Jets lost an embarrassing 10-9 game to the Denver Broncos. And let me just tell you, this game was an atrocity to watch almost all the way around. Nothing but punts in the first quarter. But finally, in the second half, they gave Javonte Williams some more sustained carries. And you know what? He actually showed that if he gets carries, he can wind up and do pretty well. Had 16 for 77. Which may not sound incredible, but since Denver only had 60 passing yards as a team, 77 rushing yards indicates a pretty good offensive output. Also caught 2 passes for 3 yards, which again does not sound that impressive, but they only have 3 pass catchers who caught passes for positive yards. So, I'm taking it where I can get it. Does this game make you feel a little better about Javonte?
So it does. And like we've been, fantasy analysts have been talking for 3 years. A healthy Javonte Williams needs to get the ball. The most hilarious stat of this game is that Cortland Sutton had 60 of the 57 yards passing by the team.
Well, Bo Nix officially had 60 yards passing.
Yeah. I mean, he made it up, but at one point he had 60 of the 50 yards passing.
I know it. The play calling is still
I mean, I feel bad for you. Is Peyton gonna survive?
You know,
I know you don't think
they
he should,
they won in Tampa Bay, and the Jets actually do have a pretty good defense, and they did enough. I just don't know if they have a great team. I have to say, this probably hurts my heart more than anything. Our MVP right now is Vance Joseph, who was a phenomenally bad head coach, and they started out phenomenally bad on defense last year, but this defense right now does not have much in the way of high profile players or stars. We lost literally our best linebacker after week 3, and they came out and they we'll talk about it, they stoned the Jets. They frustrated Aaron Rodgers. They got sacks. Their pass coverage has been really good. Riley Moss, a second-year player, has really stepped up. Surtain looks good. They gave up Justin Simmons, Kareem Jackson, and Caden Stearns at safety, and I thought, what the living hell are you doing? And they're getting like great dime store safety play. PJ Locke had the sack that put it away. So I credit that. It's got to be Vance, and I was never impressed with him when he was here as our head coach, and I will admit that I was one of the people that said that it was an embarrassment he hadn't been fired at this time last year. But thank God we have him, because their defense has been incredible. They almost won that Pittsburgh game despite having really no offense either. And they were in that Seattle game for a long time despite having no offense. It's been a miracle. But for the Jets, are you starting to get a little worried about this backfield? We've seen Braylon Allen getting more and more involved. This last week, Breece Hall just could not find much running lanes, seemed to be having kind of a disagreement with some of the coaches. Only 4 yards on 10 carries, only had a couple of receptions. Braylon Allen actually catches 1 for 12, ran 8 times for 34 yards, looked like the better running back. They actually even had him out there in 2-minute drill territory when they were trying to come back to win the game, which I thought was fascinating. I don't want to panic just yet because Breece Hall is amazing usually, but starting to get a little concerned.
Well, I think it all is going to wash out, as time goes on. Hall is going to be just fine. I think the fly in the ointment is that Braylon Allen is just good. Like, Luke Fickell went to Wisconsin, completely changed the offense, and tried to phase him out after he had 2 phenomenal years. And just it was like taking Dameon Pierce and putting him in a zone run offense. Whatever Luke Fickell run, it didn't work for Braylon Allen. Well, now Allen's in the NFL. He's a good enough pass catcher, decent pass blocker. He's got good vision. He's big and he's fast. The fact that he fell to the 4th round because of college coaching malpractice. And don't get me wrong, I love Luke Fickell. He's a Buckeye. But he didn't know how to use Braylon Allen. I think sometimes you have to go and say, well, I've got this guy that does this thing really good, so maybe I'll wait till next year before I completely change my offense. Well, I don't know. I think right now, they're 2-2, and the Jets have made some bonehead plays. They're not on the same page yet. We know it takes Rodgers a while to develop a connection with people. I won't say just players, with people, because he's a complicated fella. So I think there's bonding that needs to happen with, him and Wilson and Mike Williams and Breece Hall. And I think what happens is Rodgers gets frustrated that things don't go a certain way, and he's like, just get these people out of here. I want my own guys. Give me somebody different or whatnot. We'll fix it later. Let me just do this now. And I don't know that that's great for, the spirit of your young guys.
Next up, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers rebounded after a poor Week 3 showing to get 33 points and beat the Eagles 33-16. Dennis, despite the fact the Eagles literally had no receivers and were giving targets to Paris Campbell, the guy they acquired in trade, Jahan Dotson, a former first-round pick, just cannot get anything going. Only 4 targets, caught 2 passes for 11 yards. He has not done anything in any of the games. Is he kind of droppable?
Well, to be fair, Dotson had the same number of targets as Paris Campbell. So it wasn't like Campbell had, 10 targets and Dotson had 4.
And Paris Campbell got elevated after the practice squad, and Jahan Dotson was presumably there.
He's a quick learner. He's a Buckeye, and Dotson went to Penn State. What can I say? It feels like it should be a great opportunity for Dotson, and for what – I don't know if he's just still like he hasn't gotten over being jettisoned from Washington and how things fell apart there. And maybe there's some entitlement and he hasn't been humbled enough to be able to step back, pull himself together and move forward and do what the coaches are asking of him and what his quarterback is asking of him. It's not clicking for whatever reason. Not that it really was with Paris Campbell. I mean, he only had 17 yards on 4 catches. So I like Dotson's talent, but right now it seems like his head isn't in the right spot.
This season, 11 targets, 5 receptions, 25 yards for Jahan Dotson. Paris Campbell in 2 games, 7 targets, 6 receptions, 30 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, that –
Go Buckeyes.
Yeah, that's just like I'm not even sure I'm holding Dotson anymore in Dynasty, unless we see some.
I don't think there's a compelling reason to in Dynasty. I mean, if somebody comes along and offers you a 4th-round pick for him, take it. But he's a reclamation project. I mean, hell, Laquan Treadwell lasted 6 years in the NFL.
Meanwhile, for the Buccaneers, we saw Bucky Irving kind of have a little bit of a breakout last week. Did so again this week. They got the same number of carries, he and Rachaad White. They had the same yardage, which was freaky. Both 10 carries, 49 yards. Irving getting the rushing touchdown. Also got a catch. Rachaad White got a couple. But what do you make of this backfield?
We felt like – as analysts, it seems like we thought from watching Bucky Irving and Rachaad White run the ball that Bucky was the more talented runner. He just has better vision. He's more efficient with the ball in his hand. And I think that's playing out. And much to the credit of the coaches down there in Tampa, they are saying, we see it too, so we're going to put him in these positions to be successful. And while Irving is a pretty good pass catcher, Rachaad White is a phenomenal pass catching running back. He's somebody I could see having, an Alvin Kamara 81 catch season on the regular. He's that good of a pass catcher, but he does struggle running the ball. He had a good game this week, 10 carries for 49 yards. I think we're going to continue to see it ease more towards a 50-50 split. Through 3 games, the snaps were split 70% White, 30% Irving. This week, it was pretty close to a 60-40 split. I think we're going to continue, especially in games where the Buccaneers need to run the ball. I think we're going to start to see Bucky Irving's snap share and touches continue to creep up. But I don't think White's going away.
All right, well, on to our next game, which was the Cincinnati Bengals going into Carolina. Finally got a win, 34-24. Dennis, a couple of quiet weeks for that backfield of Zach Moss and Chase Brown to get started, but this week really took off. both of them getting 15 carries. Brown going for 80 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Moss getting 51 yards on the ground. Moss had 4 receptions for 27 yards and a touchdown. Chase Brown, a couple of receptions. Are you liking them more now as a backfield tandem?
Their skill set's a little bit different. Chase Brown is explosive. Zach Moss is not. I don't think Moss is bad. He's got okay vision. He's got decent ball security. He just doesn't have the explosiveness that Chase Brown has. They don't have to play them situationally, I don't think. I do think Moss is a better pass blocker right now, but that doesn't mean Brown can't pass block. And Moss is good at running the ball. So it isn't like Tampa where there's a big gap between their ability carrying the ball. I think the gap is just that Brown is so much more explosive, and Moss has got a little more bulk to him, and so he is a little better in the pass protection. In the first 3 games, the run-pass mix was about 55-45. This week, it was dead even, 50% run, 50% pass. And I think that in games where we see that, I think we'll see a little more of a balanced attack between the two. If the Bengals have a big lead, I think we're going to start to see some more Chase Brown because they're going to want to get him opportunity and experience. I think right now Moss is the starter. Brown is the 1B, maybe even 1C with there not being a B, just because I think that the snaps will be split a little bit more. But Brown is earning opportunity.
Meanwhile, for the Panthers, we wondered with Adam Thielen out who would step up. Xavier Legette, 2 carries, 10 yards, saw 10 targets, caught 6 for 66 and a touchdown. How are you feeling about him?
I got to be honest, I was a little surprised with the 10 targets. I thought it might spread around a little bit more than that. But honestly, they don't have a whole heck of a lot more outside of Deontay Johnson, who did have 13 targets. He had a nice game, 7 for 83 and 1. And Chuba Hubbard, 4 for 4. So, Jonathan Mingo came in third with 5 targets. Dalton throwing the ball 40 times. I mean, it's crazy how much better this offense looks with Andy Dalton. I think they're going to continue to leverage Xavier Legette. I mean, he's a little bit bigger Debo, and I think they're going to continue to leverage that. Let him run the ball a few times, put him in pass route situations where he can excel and use his size. So, I mean, overall, the Panthers are, they're sitting at 1-3, but their last 2 games, they've looked all right.
On to the next game where the Houston Texans hosted the Jacksonville Jaguars, got a 24-20 victory. Dennis, maybe a little bit better for Lawrence early, but this Jaguars team is now 0-4. What are we doing with Jacksonville?
Things are rough in Duval County, and I'm not just talking about the weather. I mean, Peterson's getting snippy, being asked about his job, and I'm like, it's a legitimate question.
Your team sucks, dude. You might want to get better.
Yeah, no kidding. They've got some weapons. It's crazy. Do they miss Evan Ingram that much? Is that really what it is?
I mean, he wasn't a big factor in week 1 for them either, the one game that he played. There's something going on with Trevor Lawrence. Once again, 18 of 33, he's barely over 50%. He was sub 200 yards. He had 2 touchdowns and no interceptions. That's okay, but $55 million quarterback for a year, you got to be expecting more. I was disappointed with ATN too, 11 carries, 50 yards, kind of ho-hum. Tank Bigsby, this is the second time in 4 games he's outrushed ATN. They're just not getting anything. Gabe Davis, 5 targets, caught 1 pass for -2 yards. He might as well be a Bronco. I mean, their investments and their guys, they gave Lawrence an extension. They picked up the 5th year on ATN. They spent a huge free agent contract on Davis. None of that has worked. Their defense,
losers.
Well, their defense isn't very good either. So, apparently.
I will say, I like what I'm seeing from Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah.
9 targets, 6 catches, a touchdown.
The Jags are literally now the only winless team in the NFL, which is an embarrassment.
Got to be somebody.
For the Texans, Tank Dell didn't play on Sunday because he's out with an injury, but I want to ask you, how are you feeling about him kind of going forward? Nico Collins seems to have really stepped into that, number one role. Stephon Diggs getting a lot of targets, getting involved in a lot of ways. Are we starting to see a scenario where Dell is kind of reasonably the third option?
I think so. He's sitting at wide receiver 74 right now. He missed the week. Nico is the alpha there. And interestingly enough, Diggs has kind of moved into this Keenan Allen jet sweep, almost Deebo Samuel kind of role in that offense. And because he's getting enough opportunity, I guess, he's not bitching about it. 5
he
catches.
Seems pretty happy. And honestly, I would expect he's going to get some favorable targeting this week when they host the Bills.
Yeah, well, I imagine, they're going to want to – he's going to want to rub their nose in it. And, it seems like right now the Bills can be had.
On to Arizona, where the Commanders came in and just laid the wood to the Cardinals, getting a 42-14 win. Dennis, Commanders now 3-1, looking really strong. And a big part of that, besides Jaden Daniels, has been Brian Robinson Jr. He had 21 carries for 101 yards and a touchdown on Sunday. Also caught 3 passes. How are you feeling about Robinson?
He's RB8 on the season, man, and that's nothing to sneeze at. So when running backs come into the NFL, we sometimes will forget, because we love young wide receivers, we want, if a wide receiver stays until his senior year, then we automatically say, oh, he doesn't have a good prospect profile because he couldn't come out early. Well, with running backs, Robinson stayed till his senior year so he could get an opportunity because, Alabama had a bunch of good running backs in front of him. And while he's not the best athlete in the world, and there were questions about whether or not he could catch the ball very well, he had a great game, and he showed himself to be a decent enough pass catcher that they don't have to rely on a satellite back, a complimentary back, if they don't want to. I get it. They got Eckler, who is really good in that role. And when he comes back, he'll go back to being in that role. But they don't have to take Robinson off the field when they go into the hurry-up offense. I think you keep rolling Robinson out there. And now I'm sure there was a certain amount of revenge for Cliff Kingsbury. So I don't know if they're going to put up 42 points every week. But Jaden Daniels looks –
they put up 38 against Cincinnati, and they put up – I guess it was the Giants game. They only got 18, but they've been scoring pretty decently.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a good offense. And
Meanwhile, what are we doing with the Arizona Cardinals? They just seem all over the place week to week. I know they were missing Trey McBride this week, but only 142 yards for Kyler Murray. They had a good rushing day, but only 14 points, and they got pretty soundly thumped at home.
I mean, it's the Kyler Murray we know and love, right?
Yeah, Mr. 2,500 yards.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's going to sometimes the bear gets you, and sometimes you get the bear, is what my dad used to say. And, Washington got him, just manhandled him from the get-go this week. Had about an 8-minute time of possession advantage over Arizona. And they just, Jaden Daniels made them look eminently beatable.
I think Kyler Murray makes them look eminently beatable, unfortunately, too. Next up, the San Francisco 49ers got back to 500 with a 30-13 home win over the New England Patriots. Dennis, Gerard Mayo still standing firm that Jacoby Brissett is their guy, doing some good things for them. I'm not sure what those good things are. Is there anything positive to take away from the Patriots offense?
So the most positive thing to take away is that Drake May is still alive and healthy. And as long as Jacoby Brissett's back there getting his ass beat behind that porous offensive line, I think that's a good thing. No offense to Jacoby Brissett, but you can't just – it's going to happen here one of these coming weeks. They're going to say it's time to make the switch. But honestly, the offensive line is – and the wide receiver group is just so poor that you're not doing Drake May a whole lot of favors by putting him back there and letting him get the snot beat out of him and having to throw to subpar receivers. So, Jalen Polk seemed to establish himself as the one. He had 7 targets. And let's continue to grow, and maybe they can – the offensive line can start to gel, and in a few weeks, maybe they have a stretch where it makes sense to put Drake May in there. But, I feel bad for Jacoby, but,
Well, they don't have any weapons either. I don't. My takeaway is I'm even starting to be mid on starting Ramondre Stevenson because the teams have been so bad.
I mean, he's
just
RB
under
25
10.
right now, and I don't know if it's going to get a lot better behind that offensive line.
Yeah. On the other side, 2 receptions for 48 yards for Brandon Ayuk. He now has 13 receptions for 167 yards in the 4 games on only 25 targets. Time to start getting a little concerned.
Well, I mean, Purdy only threw the ball 27 times. Jordan Mason ran it for 123 yards on 24 carries. Ayuk and Samuel both had 5 targets. Jennings only had 6. There just wasn't a ton of volume to go around. And I think it'll be fine. But also it was one of those games where they just didn't produce a lot of fireworks on offense. So there wasn't going to be a lot of fantasy points because of the number of weapons that they have.
Yeah, but even so, that's about the normal target share for Brandon Ayuk. He had 10 in week 3 when Kittle and Debo were also gone, but he's had 5 in every other game. And he's been the least productive of those guys in terms of getting, Jennings outscored him with more receptions and yardage. Debo had more receptions, and I think yardage, when you combine his rush and Kittle, got more receptions, about the same amount of yardage and a touchdown. It just, we thought Ayuk might be a wide receiver 1. Now I'm not even sure he's still a wide receiver 3.
Well, Debo's only a wide receiver 3, so it isn't like
I know
he missed a week, but still, it isn't like that offense is. Juwan Jennings is going on the strength of one monster week. So,
well, I'm not saying Jennings would be my every week start either, but it's getting a little concerning. The Las Vegas Raiders hosted the Cleveland Browns in what was kind of an ugly game. The Raiders get the 20-16 victory. Dennis, what's up with the Browns?
It's the curse of Deshaun Watson, man.
You're cursed because you have Deshaun Watson.
Right. Amari Cooper can't catch the ball, and when he does, there's a questionable holding call that brings the touchdown back. I mean, that was a crap call.
But if he started Blake Whiteheart, you're feeling pretty good.
I mean, and David Njoku's been out for weeks. Hopefully he gets back soon. I mean, the team's kind of a mess right now, and every now and again, Watson will make a throw that makes you go, oh, that's why. I mean, there were so many plays that you saw him back there that, he got a little pressure and he put his head down. He was looking at the pressure, wasn't looking at the receivers. And, we're wasting money.
They need to get their line healthy too, but you bring up a good point. 91 of 148. He has 61.5% completion for 727 yards. 4 TDs, 3 INTs. He is on pace for 3,090 passing yards, 17 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions. I'm pretty sure they could have gotten that without spending what $235 million guaranteed.
It was a lot.
For the Raiders, the player that didn't play on Sunday may be continuing to be the biggest story, and that is Davante Adams. He popped up late in the week with an injury, got ruled out on Friday, and now there have been persistent rumors they're looking at moving him. Today, story broke that they are actually shopping him around. He gave a real, to this point, he has always been pretty steadfast that he's a Raider and staying a Raider. His interview today was a little less steadfast. What do you think is the chances that Davante Adams gets moved, and is that potentially good for the Raiders?
It depends on what they get for him. To be fair, I think if they trade Adams, I don't think Antonio Pierce makes it, and I'm not sure that keeping Adams, they make it either. He was hamstrung at the quarterback position, and they decided to go with a jag at running back, and they just it was one of those situations where they were so happy to be rid of Josh McDaniel that they played fired up last year for Antonio Pierce, and now they don't have that same fire consistently. So
they've gotten a couple of wins. I don't think they have enough talent to be a serious contender. I'm not sure trading Adams means the end for Pierce. I feel like he would get another year because this is really only his first full year in the job, and I think they have some work to do. Quarterback is a question. Minshew's been okay, but I actually kind of like what I saw from DJ Turner and Trey Tucker this week, and they have a good young tight end in Brock Bowers, plus a pretty solid veteran in Jacoby Myers. I think it may not, as somebody who's watched Denver be better than I thought they were going to be by cutting loose of some of the high-value veterans, going with a young group and letting them play, I don't think that would be the worst thing in the world for either Adams or the Raiders, because it's got to be frustrating for Adams, whose window to get a title is narrowing. Now it's going to probably make me look for a trash can to retch in if he gets traded to the Chiefs, which was what they were talking about today. Only a Davis would be dumb enough to trade a star player in your division.
I don't know. Detroit did it.
Who did they? Oh, that's right. It didn't work out too bad for them either. I never know. Speaking of the dreaded Kansas City Chiefs, they went into Los Angeles and got a 17-10 win over the Chargers. But when is a win a loss, Dennis? And, well, it is when you see your best receiver and really your only great receiver blow his knee out in the game, and that is the fate that befell Rashee Rice. A lot of talk this week about Juju Smith-Schuster, Sky Moore stepping up. But what does this pass offense look like without Rice?
The worst part of that injury is that it was Mahomes who hit him in the knee. And it's just like
Mahomes was just doing it on behalf of the people of Texas who are waiting for justice.
Yeah, I guess. It was tough because, Rice was looking good. He was a later draft pick. Man. Yep. They're going to need somebody to be a volume receiver. I think there's going to be some more forcing the ball to Kelsey. But Noah Gray also went 4 for 40. Worthy had 4 targets, and he had the deep shot for the touchdown. Justin Watson has always been a guy that flashes a play here and there, but he's never been a guy that came in for weeks in a row and put up numbers. At least with Juju, we've seen him in the past put up numbers week after week after week. Now, that was in Pittsburgh and stuff, and the knee was a lot healthier, so I don't know what we'll get out of Juju. But, Worthy played 73% of the snaps, Watson 69, and Juju 52. One of the telling things to me is that Noah Gray also played 52% of the snaps. And so I don't know if Gray was actually slated for that many or if he played more because Rice was out. But Mahomes does have confidence in Gray. He's been there now for a few years. He knows the offense. He's an athletic enough tight end. And so if they're going to run 2 tight ends and let Xavier Worthy draw the coverage deep in a way, and Justin Watson at 6'2", 215, he's a guy that they like to target downfield. So it may end up just fine. And, then now Kareem Hunt's back and seemingly staking his claim to the starting job and looking like he's only lost a half a step.
Meanwhile, for the Chargers, they did not get the victory, but Ladd McConkey, 7 targets, 5 receptions, 67 yards, a touchdown. He looks like he's coming along. How are you feeling about McConkey?
Well, the talk was that he was going to be the guy. They let their top receivers leave. They drafted McConkey. Jim Harbaugh said he believed in Quentin Johnston. McConkey's wide receiver 37, Johnston's wide receiver 38, and they don't throw the ball a lot. So those are their 2 guys. Joshua Palmer's back healthy. So, it feels like they've got a serviceable trio of wide receivers, none of whom are going to, occasionally you might get a big game from one of them, but I'm not really counting on that. I think they're going to keep trying to grind it with Dobbins and Edwards, and then they need Herbert to get healthy.
On to Sunday Night Football, where the Baltimore Ravens held serve at home, getting the 35-10 win over Buffalo. Dennis, for the Bills, Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman seem to be a little bit of the focus of the wide receiver group this week. Some nice chemistry. Shakir catching 4 for 62, including a big 52-yard bomb. Keon Coleman and Josh Allen seeming to find something a little bit on the sideline. He caught 3 for 51. How are you feeling about those 2 guys?
So I love Khalil Shakir. He profiles almost as a clone of Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's like the dollar store version of Amon-Ra right now. And I think he's going to just continue he's going to be the wide receiver 1 there. Coleman, all 3 of his catches and the 1 incompletion were all basically the same route and the same pass, that back shoulder. And he put it together and he looked real good. They missed some other plays down the field, like with Mac Hollins, and they actually took a shot at Marquez Valdes-Scantling. But I'm tempering my excitement about Keon Coleman. He was 4th on the team in targets, and Josh Allen is just averaging only 25 attempts per game, and he's targeted 9 or 10 receivers each game. Sunday was the fewest number of people he had targeted, and that was 8. So on 29 passes.
They did take a deep shot with Coleman too, and if he would have had hands attached to his body, that would have been a huge night. Hopefully they're working on something. I do feel like I'm leaning toward those 2 guys as the receivers I'm most interested in. It was nice to see them actually target and use Dalton Kincaid a little bit more. Speaking of receiving issues, Isaiah Likely, Zay Flowers, and Mark Andrews combined for 2 receptions for 36 yards on just 5 targets. They've gotten that running game going with Derrick Henry. They're running with Lamar Jackson. He also seems to have a lot of eyes locked in on Justice Hill out of the backfield. This is the 2nd goose egg in a row for Mark Andrews, and after a big week 1, Isaiah Likely has likely not done you a lot of favors in your lineup the last few weeks. Is it time to get a little concerned about Ravens pass catching targets?
So Likely has 6 targets since his big week 1. And Mark Andrews, I am encouraging everybody to unceremoniously bench him.
Yeah, I did last week too.
He's just not – he's playing the fewest number of snaps since his 2nd year in the NFL. But Likely also is only playing 59%, and Andrews is 58%. So Charlie Kohler is racking up a bunch of snaps as the third tight end. But Lamar's not throwing the ball very much. And now that he's got Justice Hill and, while it didn't show this week, Zay Flowers, he's got lots of targets to throw to. And then you got Derrick Henry, who's grinding it out with 24 carries for 200 yards.
Yeah, it's hard to rely on any of those guys because they're also still mixing in targets for Rashad Bateman and Nelson Aguilar. So it's like,
well, they did sign both those guys to extension. So,
well, there you go. Monday Night Football. The first game was something. Tennessee Titans coming away with the 31-12 win, but it was not as exciting as it sounds. Will Levis came out, threw an early interception, got knocked to the ground, came out with a shoulder injury that put Mason Rudolph in relief. And that actually seemed to be a good thing for the Titans. His stat sheet's not incredible, only 9 of 17 for 85 yards, but they were able to get the running game going. They were able to play fairly turnover free and let that defense do its thing and get a victory. Is it possible that Rudolph would be a better option than Levis?
I mean, Rudolph would be an option, definitely. I think better is relative. What Rudolph has, I think, that Levis doesn't have is experience. Now, he doesn't have a ton of starts under his belt, but he started, probably 15 or 20 games in his NFL career?
Yeah, because he had that one season that he started almost exclusively for Ben, and last year he started 4 or 5 to end the season.
That's and he's been in the league. This is his 6th or 7th season. So he's been in the league, and there's no substitute for experience and being there. And I get it. You want Levis to play. You want him to get experience. He's a better athlete than Rudolph. Has as big or bigger arm as Rudolph. I don't think he's as accurate as Rudolph on a consistent basis yet. But to me, it feels like they're two sides of the same coin. If they're going to run the ball 37 times with Pollard and Spears like they did last night, I don't know that it matters a ton who the quarterback is.
Yeah, so it would probably have been more curious, but I think the turnovers are what has really plagued Levis. They did say today if he's healthy, he's the one that's going, and they have a bye week this week, so I wouldn't run out and pick up Mason Rudolph just yet. For the Dolphins, they gave the start to Tyler Huntley. I honestly thought Huntley would be a little bit better. He wasn't terrible on the ground, 8 for 40 and a touchdown, but only 14 of 22 for 96. This offense still looks poor. Huntley, Thompson, do you have a preference?
Yeah, I still like Huntley because I do think he provides a little bit more on the ground than Thompson does, but I don't think any of them are great options. Huntley needs to be better. He's in a tough spot. He's been with the team for 2 weeks. The talk is Tua's coming back in week 8 or 9. So, I mean, whoever's in there is just trying to keep the seat warm. We see it a lot. And we say it like, know what the mission is. The mission is get the ball to Tyreek Hill. And I don't think Huntley throws a great deep ball, so you're not going to do it that way. He had, 4 of 7 to Hill for 23 and 4 of 6 to Waddle for 36.
They tried to get him going on some jet sweeps and stuff too. I think it's weird that they credited that fumble on the backwards pass to Huntley because Hill short-armed it and then didn't chase it, so that was...
Yeah, I think if Huntley has another week of prep, I'm not sure who they play next week, but
they play the Patriots, so that game might set back offensive football a couple of decades.
Yeah, it could be. We haven't seen a 3-2 game in a while.
Yeah. Well, we went from one of the worst games of the week to one of the best games of the week to end Monday night, and that was
the season.
Yeah, the Seahawks at the Lions, who got the 42-29 victory. Dennis, Seattle came in 3-0. They do take a loss, but 395 passing yards for Geno Smith, 3 rushing touchdowns for Kenneth Walker. They were kind of keeping up there on offense, trying to keep it going. How are you feeling about the Seahawks?
I want to feel great. And from a fantasy perspective, I do, because Walker and Geno and Metcalf and Lockett and Smith and Jigba all put up nice nights. But from a real football standpoint, I don't know that I want Geno Smith throwing the ball 56 times. That's especially if he's only going to get one touchdown.
I feel like he would have gotten more, except for when they were on the goal line, they managed to smash it. And I was actually kind of surprised their run game was as effective as it was, because Detroit, the one thing you would say about their defense is they had pretty well smothered running games. They have not been, I don't know who's zero. I can't remember who's zero. Terry and Arnold.
Yeah.
They were
he's learning how to play cornerback in the NFL.
He's learning how to do something. I mean,
he's used to the college game where he could bully people a little more and not get calls against him. In the NFL, he's getting a lot of penalties on him. Now, I think Walker has the propensity to bounce the ball outside a lot, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. That one touchdown he went inside and then bounced it way outside. He leaves a lot of yards on the field doing that. I think that's probably his biggest flaw, but you see that he can do it, and so you understand why he tries. The little flip that he did was nice to not go down. That was pretty sweet. Cole was all excited because Cole's got him on the Fantasy Football Roundtable Redraft League. So yeah. Cole's like, I need some points out of him.
He had a huge night.
Yeah. As of right now, you, me, Cole, Jackie, and Beth would all be in the playoffs if they started this week.
Give me some time. I'm sure. Well, that's right. I have a whole bunch of lines. I did pretty well last night then too, because I forgot I have Gibbs and Amon-Ra and Jared Goff. It was a good week to be a Lion. Speaking of Jared Goff, when I picked him as my preseason choice for NFL MVP, this was the kind of game I was thinking of. This exactly. 18 of 18, 292 yards and 2 touchdowns passing. Also caught a touchdown for a 7-yard touchdown strike, which makes him more effective as a touchdown pass catcher than Mark Andrews or Brandon Ayuk or Travis Kelce. I saw in a graphic today. What did you think of Goff's perfect game?
So, for the record, that wasn't a touchdown strike. That was a lob.
You catch it, you get in the end zone. That's a strike. Amon-Ra,
he looped it up there. No, I thought Gibbs had a great game. David Montgomery.
I have to tell you, when I was not watching it live at the time because I was watching a comedy with my wife, and when I saw the box score pop up that said Amon-Ra St. Brown 7-yard touchdown pass to Jared Goff, I thought, friggin' ESPN, you can't even get your stats straight.
Montgomery's 40-yard reception where he just kind of brutalized that one guy. So I love Dave Montgomery. He was my guy when he came out, and I love him on the Lions. And I can't help but feel like we got him next year, then they're going to let him walk, and in 2026 we're going to be looking at a Jahmyr Gibbs, Tyler Algier backfield up in Detroit. Algier will slide right into that role, be just perfect for it.
Montgomery's been good. Both those running backs are good plays.
Yeah.
Before we get out of here, Thursday night football to kick off week 5 is another divisional battle this time.
Hey, hold on. Yeah. We can't not mention Jameson Williams' 70-yard touchdown.
I mean, it was nice to see.
We don't have to talk about it. I just wanted to mention
relevance. I mean, if you started any of your Lions or Seahawks, you're feeling good because they supported 3 receivers in Seattle, 2 running backs. Charbonnet didn't have a huge night, but with his passing and then on the other side, Laporta had one of his better games of the year. I mean, it wasn't like last year, but it was pretty good. Both the receivers, even Tim Patrick put up 7 points in PPR. Yep. So, if you started anyone in that game, you're feeling pretty good. Thursday night is an NFC South battle. The 3-1 Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the 2-2 Atlanta Falcons. Dennis, Baker Mayfield had a rough week 3 at home, but has been pretty good beside that. How are you feeling about him as a fantasy starter?
So I think you gotta, you're riding Baker, you're riding Mike Evans, you're riding Chris Godwin, Rashad White, and now Bucky Irving. I think what you have to do is realize Baker's going to give you some good weeks, and he's going to give you some, low end QB2 weeks. But I think he's always going to be startable in the super flex league. And then, Evans is going to do what he does. He's going to have some good big weeks. He's going to have some weeks where he only puts up a few points. And we've learned to live with that over the years because, he goes on these incredible stretches. So I think Baker's got weapons. Even Cade Otton has looked good. And when you've got Evans, Godwin, Cade Otton, and Rashad White to throw the ball to, it puts you in a position to be a reasonably good fantasy quarterback.
On the other side, Kyle Pitts was another one of those players that took the donut last week. Stats are for losers, but you're also a loser in fantasy if you don't pay attention to the stats and roll out a 0 in your lineup. You can't bench Kyle Pitts yet, right? Because at least he's getting targets usually, but how are you feeling?
Well, you can't cut him in Dynasty yet. And if you
I
trade
wouldn't put him in redraft either, if we're being honest.
And if you trade him, you're trading him low right now. I think that you're holding him in redraft, but I'm not going to fault you if you pick up Tyler Conklin or Johnny Munt, or Noah Fant.
Johnny Munt hasn't done anything.
What?
Johnny Munt hasn't done anything either. So,
well, I still wouldn't fault you. I mean, because right now he's as much a roll of the dice as any of those other players are. And
tight end is garbage, honestly, as a position right now.
It's brutal.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if there is a single guy I feel great about. Dallas Goedert's probably the one I feel best about, and he's on the bye. Who knew? I am going to take the Falcons at home.
I'm taking the Buccaneers.
We'll see. One of us will be happy, and we'll, the great thing is you and I will be back on Thursday, so this game will be going on live, so there'll be some sadness as we're going along. Dennis, if people need something to fill their time during a lonely Wednesday, what can they do?
They can go to their favorite podcast platform, hit that search bar, type in the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast, give us a like and a subscribe and a follow. Go to Twitter. Roundtable FF is our handle on the Xbox there. Give us a follow.
Well, that'll do it for us today. We will be back a day early. We will be back also a little bit later on Thursday, probably during that Thursday night football game. So we'll give you some live updates just by our facial expressions, the tears that stream down one of our faces, depending on how this game goes and depending on whether I roll the dice and have to start Kyle Pitts. But we will preview all of the Week 5 action. 4 teams on a bye this week, so get ready as you're setting your lineups. The Lions are out, the Eagles are out, the Chargers are out, and the Tennessee Titans are out. The Jets and the Vikings are going to London, so a lot to keep track of as we move into Week 5.
9:30 game.
Going to be at 9:30, so it's a 4-window Sunday. Alert the family. Do something nice. Take your wife on a picnic on Saturday, something like that.
We're going to Tom Segura.
You are literally not going to see. You are literally not going to see your spouse on Sunday with the 4-window action game. But we will preview all that Week 5 action for you on Thursday. Until then, you guys have a wonderful week.